is a small change to the minutes, which has already been changed, I believe, by Manager Courtmaker, but just to highlight it, we rose, the board rose from private session at 6:09. It's actually the board rose from public at 6:09 into private. And then also regrets for Rochelle is being fixed as well. So those two pieces were fixed, and also the numbering later on in the minutes under 4 is Microsoft had a quirk. So it doesn't change the content, just the.
Thank you for those. Any other speakers to the minutes or the agenda? You had me talking about minutes when it's the agenda. Yes, okay. So, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of our First People. And I would also like to let everybody know that it was Sneak It In week, and most of you missed it, but the senior admin and trustees did a 7th inning stretch to recognize the Blue Jays in their first week of play prior to public session. And thank you to trustees Al Harrison and Papin for organizing us. So, do we have any declarations of possible conflict of interest tonight? Seeing none, we have no delegations or presentations. So we are now up to the minutes of our public board meeting from March the 23rd, 2016. And I do believe we had some prior comments that people can take as noted from Trustee Harvey Hope. Is there any other comments on the minutes? Do we have a mover for those minutes as amended? Trustee Reynolds and Trustee Gray. Seeing no other speakers, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We are now up to business transacted in private session. Did we have anything to ratify from private session? Nothing today. Okay. So we are now up to our order paper. Are there any questions or comments on our order paper tonight? Seeing none, we're moving right along. We're up to our action items. And our first action item is Employment Equity Policy, Executive Officer McFadden, Report 16047, revised on page 10 of your board package. And I believe Director Miller will speak to that.
Thank you, Chair Amos. As per some corrections from the board last week, the revised equity policy indicating those changes that were pointed out to us last week, and you'll see them on your package. The partially updated, there's more info to be added after approval in the very top right-hand corner. But as you go on, the prohibited grounds under the code include the following, and you can see the additions: ancestry, citizenship, color, ethnic origin, place of origin, record of offenses. And then down, legal references, Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and the criminal and background check administrative procedure. So I think that satisfies the rightful concerns that the Board of Trustees brought to us last week, or 2 weeks ago. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to put the motion on the floor, and then we'll have any questions and comments. The recommendation is, be it resolved, the Halton District School Board approve the Employment Equity Policy as appended to Report 16047. Moved by Trustee Harvey Hope, seconded by Trustee Daniele. speakers. Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to second this and very pleased to support it because I think it's 2016. It's right. But I just wanted to add a little plug in here because I think the work being done here is really excellent. But I would ask, we received a report at the Equity Inclusion Committee on our equitable hiring practices, and there's some amazing, amazing work being done there. So if it's at all possible at some point, Director, if we could have a 10-minute presentation at the beginning of a board meeting on what we're doing to actually make sure this policy is happening. There's some really great stuff happening that I don't think we're all aware of.
Director Miller.
Through your chair, Amos, to Trustee Daniele, absolutely. We'll share that with Executive Officer McFadden, and we'll get a presentation.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
I'll pass, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers or comments about this recommendation tonight? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. So we are now up to the highlight of the evening, the student trustee reports. Trustees Schneider and Sahai.
Good evening, everyone. So we had our last student senate meeting on March 29th, and there we were really buckling down on our planning for our conference. So the elementary school workshops that are taking place are going to be mental health and time management. So again, it's about going from elementary school to high school. So they're really showing how to manage your time with the different workload and make sure stress management, getting good grades, but also taking care of yourself. Another one is leader from elementary to secondary school. So it's going from a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond, and how do you maintain your leadership skills. The third one was actually French immersion for the French immersion students, primarily from École Forestral, about maintaining your French in high school, and even if you're not going into French immersion, how do you keep that French up all the way through to graduation. And another one is high school secrets, which will focus on, this is for elementary and secondary, but focus on the different pathways that you can take in high school, and different programs like SHISM and everything, co-op, that you often learn later in high school, that Jobin and I found that we learned these things a little too late. So then them kind of ratifying what's available early can help increase the opportunities in those programs. In secondary, we have panels instead of workshops. The feedback from the secondary students is they wanted more of a panel style thing. And there's going to be a STEM panel, people in the field, social science panel, people in the field, and then applying to post-secondary 101. So that's more for the junior students in grade 11, so they know what's upcoming, because we felt, again, we were kind of thrown into the fire this year with applications and stuff like that. And post-secondary life, so and again, high school secrets. So those are the workshops and panels that are happening. We're also going to have a keynote, lunch, and we're going to host our student voice consultations for our report that will take place at the conference, which is on May 12th. On our website, all the information is there, so if everybody wants to take a look, we're going to start, all the information is up online, but we're going to start advertising a little later on, and we usually have really good elementary participation, but we're really focusing on reaching out to the secondary students this year, and getting that attendance up there. So we're going to release posters to the secondary students, and maybe have the trustees help with distribution of that. That would be really cool. Other than that, do you have things to add? Student trustee elections.
So we had our candidates meeting for the student trustee elections this year last Tuesday. And so we had a decent turnout. We had 7 candidates come, and so we delivered information regarding the process this year. And then after that, we received a bunch more nominations. A lot of people couldn't attend that meeting. So today was the last day we collected all the nominations, and by the looks of it, we got maybe about 10 to 12 different candidates. So it's going to be a really, really fun process. Our election is going to be on April 26th, 6 to 8 here in the board office. And then we're also going to look at live streaming it, because that's what we have in our policy out. So in case you can't attend here at the board office, we'll make it available so you can vote through a different method. Like Sophie said, I confirmed our HLS conference on May 12th at Sheridan College, and I think that is it for now.
Thank you. Sounds like things are heating up. Is there any comments or questions for our student trustees tonight? Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that report. It's a lot of exciting things on the go. I was just wondering, how has attendance been at the meetings, and is it fairly, are we covered geographically?
So attendance has been fairly stable. We have, typically for every single meeting, we have around 50 senators show up, 45 to 50 senators, and most of those are typically our elementary students, and then I would say about maybe like 30, would you say, 30 elementary, 15 or so, 20 or so secondary?
Yeah, the turnout has been about hovering around 50-60 for each of the meetings, but yeah, of course we're getting less from the north, like always. We did try the stream from an alternate location, but only 2 senators showed up to that location. Right, there were 2 plus the 2 running it. So although that was good, we are going to do in our plans for transitioning next year to implement that earlier on and have that option in place from the beginning, so then the consistent representation from the north there. Other than that, it's been probably declining in the secondary students because school is getting really busy and it's intense time. It's committing an entire night. So although we do have representation from most of our secondary schools, so that's been good.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for our student trustees? I have one. Do you know, is representation just, I don't need to know exactly, but is it cover the board for the people who are potentially going to be applying to be the next student trustees? Like, is there some running from the north as well as south, northeast?
We have them from Burlington and in Oakville. In our year that we ran, there was one from Alton, but yeah, we don't have a lot from the north again. Yeah, unfortunately. Although all the memos did go out to all the principals of the board, so there was equal opportunity. So I think the attendance, our plans for attendance next year of more in the Senate will bring awareness to more of the northern schools, therefore more would run from the north.
Thank you. Trustee Danieli, did you? Okay, thank you. Seeing no other speakers, thank you very much for your report tonight, and keep us posted on all the good things happening. Thank you. We're now up to notices of motion. Do we have any notices of motion tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to our action items for April the 20th, 2016. The first item is the Discrimination and Harassment Policy. Director Miller, report 16061 on page 12 of your board package. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos. Trustees, This policy was posted February 3rd, and we've had 2 responses, and those have been shared with the trustees, I believe. When were they shared? You know when?
Friday with the agenda package
Did you? Friday with the agenda package?
by email.
By email. They're not in the package. So if you have any questions, thanks.
Are there any comments or questions regarding this topic, which will be coming back in 2 weeks? Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. So I read the comments as well that were submitted. I thought they were really, really good and well thought out comments. My question is, firstly, how do families fit into the process, recognizing that parents often speak on behalf of minors? So it says including paid volunteer or trustees or students. So I just wonder about the place of the families, parents. And then secondly, one of our comments was about good policies and how they translate down into our classrooms, because good policies don't really mean much unless they actually make a difference with our students in the classroom. So I was wondering if at some point this time or next time we could talk about how, if and when this is passed, how it gets implemented, conveyed, translated, followed up on in our system.
Dr. Miller?
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee L. Harrison. With respect to parents, this discrimination and harassment policy really is about people who are in our buildings, the employees, kids, volunteers, people who are connected to the HDSB. It's not really directed for parents. I would assume, though, that extrapolating this policy would apply to parents, and I would expect that our staff would follow this policy with respect to dealing with parents as well. The challenge will become if it's the other way around, shall we say, when there's discrimination and harassment from parents to some staff or etc. In terms of the promulgation of this to our staff, this is out there, and there's procedures attached to this, correct? There's procedures attached to this that the staff will all have. But it's like every other policy we get out there. It goes to staff, they get it, they should be reading it, and they should be sorting through it. We are currently doing a review of some of our processes on how we promulgate with our staff around all these things. So I don't know if that's answered your question, but
in our comments and, scenarios that sometimes one hears, sometimes it helps to for people to have examples, because sometimes things are perpetuated unknowingly. Anyway, so I wanted to reflect one of the comments that was made in that regard. I think
I'm going to look to Superintendent Etoff if you have any comments. This really around this. You're absolutely right, and we have equity training. All senior admin and all school administrators and managers have had race relations training as well. This was last year, and discrimination training, and there's ongoing training. So I'm looking at Superintendent Etoff to address that.
Yeah, I'd say this is a part of our regular training regime with staff across the board, particularly our school administrators. One example would be actually this coming month at our Family of Schools meetings with all of our administrators across the system. Almost the entire agenda is focused on equity issues, and some of which would be connected to some of the issues that you're speaking about at the present time. So
And I'll just add, your point is well taken, Trustee L. Harrison. There is the perpetuation of comments, behaviors that are not intended to be to be discriminatory or malicious, but nevertheless they occur, and we need to do this training on an ongoing basis, and we do this training on an ongoing basis. There are comments made that there's a belief that it's just an innocent comment with a lack of sort of understanding of what that comment may have, and I understand there was something pointed out at SEAC last night as well around that we need to clean up. So I think this is a policy, and the attendant procedures is something that we have to be vigilant to and work on these things, because there's things that happen in this board, and they have happened in this board, and I would say every board, where comments were made or an action was taken that at the time was well intended and did not seem to be, and then it was pointed out, I can't think of a specific example, pointed out that could be construed as discrimination or harassment or insensitive at the very best. So it's something that we need to continue to work on. So I know Superintendent Etof's department does work hard on this, and we have a whole department devoted to it, and the superintendent in charge of equity. So we are taking that seriously. So.
And just speaking to the example piece, I think sometimes it is really helpful to have a concrete example. So if it's helpful for the trustees, when we have our finalized agenda for this administrative learning for the month of April, that we can certainly pass that along so that you have a sense of the types of things that we're talking about and training our administrators in.
Go ahead.
And as I said the fall of 2014, all school administrators, all senior admin had someone from Canadian Race Relations come and provide us on race discrimination and all those kinds of things. And we had a training session on that for an entire day. I guess you can argue is a day enough, but it's the type of training we're doing. So.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers on this topic? Seeing none, we will move on to the next item, which is SEAC membership. Superintendent Zonnefeld, Report 16062 on page 14 of your board package. Superintendent Zonnefeld.
Good evening, trustees. The report you have before you is around a change in membership at SEAC. We have a very active, vibrant SEAC that provides great input and advice to trustees and staff around special education topics and issues. From time to time, that membership changes. And so what's before you is a request for a change in the alternate for the Autism Ontario Halton chapter member, Karen Mack is her name, who's stepping forward and is looking for your support to become the alternate on our SEAC, representing that association. Any questions?
I'm assuming there's probably some urgency to waive the rules. Trustee Collard.
Yes, we have 2 meetings in the month of April, so if this is not waived tonight, the alternate will not be able to participate in the second meeting, and we'll have to wait until May, so there is some urgency, and we would ask for a waiving of the rules this evening.
So you're making a motion to waive the rules? Thank you. Do I have a seconder to waive the rules? Trustee Reynolds. Is there any discussion on waiving the rules tonight? I know, I just have to get there. All those in favor of waiving the rules? And that passes unanimously, so I'll put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved, the Halton District School Board approved the appointment of Karen Mack as the Halton District School Board SEAC alternate representative for the Autism Ontario Halton chapter. Moved by Trustee Collard, seconded by Trustee Pappen. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Superintendent Sonnenfeld. Our next item for action on May the 4th, 2016, is our long-term accommodation plan. Superintendent Spearman, Mr. Renzella, Lorene and Michelle, welcome as well. I'll turn it over to you, and then if trustees have any comments or questions, they can respond. Superintendent Veerman joining you, or is she just letting you?
No, she's going to let
Okay.
me
Thank you.
get kind of crowded up here. Thank you very much. Again, I want to introduce two senior planners from Planning Department. First to my immediate left is Lorene Choi. Lorene is a senior planner for the Oakville and Halton Hills communities. And to my far left is Michelle Degar. Michelle is the senior planner for Burlington and Milton. And these two have been quite instrumental in putting the document together. They're the ones that do all the enrollment projections, and they're the ones that I blame when we're off. So they've put a lot of time and effort into this, and I felt compelled to bring them to the meeting. They were at a previous meeting with the trustees in March, and felt that they should be in attendance as well this time around. I'm not going to go through the document page by page with you. I'll kind of hit on some of the highlights and open it up to discussion. As trustees are well aware, the board has developed and updated its long-term accommodation plan in order to meet Ministry of Education requirements. And I believe that this document is probably one of the best in the province.
Mr. Renzella, you had a PowerPoint, didn't you?
Yes.
There it is. Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that it was part of the presentation. Thank you. He's getting... And you can repeat that last sentence because it was very worthwhile.
For time's sake, we'll continue on. I've got 25 more slides to go through. The LTAP provides enrollment projections for the next 10 years for both elementary and secondary schools in the region. It identifies new capital project initiatives over the next 4 years, school boundary review initiatives, and also identifies review areas in schools that are facing enrollment pressures and decline. As part of the board report, the LTAP is also now posted on, as of Friday, was posted on the board website. New this year, well, we've improved the LTAP from last year. If many of you might see in terms of the document, it's our new version. We've improved. The introduction of the LTAP has added a flow chart showing the purpose of the LTAP. We've identified graphically, numerically, the enrollment and boundary issues. We've had included a special education charge, summary chart for each municipality and school. We've included municipal profile pages for each elementary review area, reference map. We've redesigned the feeder school lists. We've also redesigned the French immersion feeder flow schools. Historical enrollments by ERA and SRA have been added. Projected enrollments by ERA and SRA have been added. And we've also included the secondary review areas into the municipal grouping. Previously, it was a separate tab. And we've had a new design for the cover page and introductory pages using board colors. So we've really kind of beefed it up this year. Again, all that goes to my, the accolades go to my staff for really doing the major improvements this year. What goes into long-term planning? Well, of course, we look at enrollment forecasts, program delivery. We look at existing school capacities. We have incorporated and include identified planning review areas. We look at the utilization of pupil places in schools. It also includes site size, portable capacities of how many portables we can place on each school, and the timing of capital projects. When staff undertakes the enrollment projections, there's a number of factors that are reviewed and updated annually. We look at the timing of new residential developments, and we include and ensure that we have the residential unit types. We look at residential sales and closing dates. What we have not included is we've only included the existing residential applications that have been circulated to us by the municipalities. There are some ongoing development that's going to occur sometime in the future, but we have not included them because we don't know the timing, phasing, and actual numbers of units. We've also looked at historical and regional birth data. We look at pupil yield rates of school-age children for each housing type, historical progression factors, and basically pupil retention rates, including students from other publicly funded and private schools. And those progression factors look at what's been happening in the school on a grade-by-grade basis, how they've increased or decreased over time. And of course, we've looked at French immersion versus English language enrollments. School utilization, understanding the existing and future school utilization is key to the development of the LTAP. And a number of factors may impact on school utilization. They include the class sizes for JKSK students, the primary class size cap, the program enrollments, special education programs and placements, capacity for portable classrooms on site, and other Ministry of Education initiatives. The region is, the study is of course region-wide, and we've more or less focused on elementary review areas and secondary review areas within each municipality. The LTAP analyzes the accommodation needs of all elementary and secondary review areas. And the need to build new schools focuses on the capacity and enrollment within each of these review areas. And the capacity of neighboring review areas is essential to consider when determining accommodation needs. Just to, again, refresh trustees' memories, the board has approved as of this February the Program and Accommodation Review Policy, which complies with the Ministry of Education guidelines released last March. And again, the policy supports a transparent process for decision-making that may lead to school consolidations and closures in order to address declining and shifting student enrollment. And in October of 2015, the board also approved the Community Planning Partnerships Policy. And again, that policy focuses on opportunities to share facilities with community partners when building new schools and undertaking renovations, and considers use of unoccupied space in schools identified to be closed and disposed of. In terms of the capital plan projects, we've recently completed 3 projects effective the 2015-2016 school year. That's the new Unawi Public School, Boyne Public School, and of course the Heritage Glen Public School addition. We have 2 projects underway right now. That's the new Martin Street Public School, which is expected to open by September 2017, and the Halton Village Public School addition, which is, again, scheduled to open in 2016-27 school year. There's one more project that's in progress, and that's the addition to Craig Kielburger. Elementary projections. Well, we're projecting over the next 10 years an overall increase of about 3%. We're also projected to have about 187 available pupil places by 2025 in 10 years. It basically indicates that we have enough spaces overall to accommodate the students. And again, the overall utilization rate is approximately 100%. Secondary projections, the same thing. We will be increasing by 11% over the next 10 years. We will have maybe about 243 available pupil places by 2025, 2026, with an overall utilization in the board of about 99%, which is great. It's something that we do try to achieve. So overall, right now, we have a combined elementary and secondary utilization rate of 96%. However, within each municipality, there are review areas of significant growth and areas of decline in enrollment. In terms of Burlington, at the elementary panel, there's declining enrollment in mature neighborhoods will lead to the underutilization in all Burlington ERAs, with the exception of ERA 109, which basically is the Halton Village Public School catchment area. We're projected to have 2,329 empty pupil places by 2025, with a overall utilization rate of 84%. And there's a number of ERAs that will drop below 80% over the next 10 years. And there's some ERAs will continue to have some utilization over 90%, and those are identified on the slide. Oakville Elementary is projected to have a shortfall of about 555 pupil places by 2025, with utilization of about 104%. Again, the major focus is going to be North Oakville, which is ERA 118, in terms of ongoing residential development. As we've outlined in previous meetings, that the anticipated growth in that community is about approximately 50,000 people. And as a result of that, we'll likely see the need for 5 additional elementary schools in that community over the long term. And just to reiterate, Unawi opened this year, and there was revised boundaries for River Oaks and Sunnydale Public School, and as a result did provide temporary relief for the North Oakville area. And again, projections indicate that the next school will be required by 2018-2019 in order to provide accommodation relief to Unawi, as well as River Oaks and Munns Public School. Milton Elementary, again, we're still continuing to see a high rate of residential development. The new Martin Street Public School rebuild is underway, and we're anticipating a boundary review to occur in the fall of 2016. ERA 127, that's basically the Boyne community, which is located south of Louis St. Laurent to Britannia Road, has a plan for 6 elementary schools and 1 secondary school. And again, the first elementary school of the 6 is Boyne Public School. And the enrollments indicate that we would need the Milton number 10 school by 2018-2019 and the Milton number 11 school by 2020-2021. Again, all subject to ministry funding and site acquisition. By 2025, it is projected that there will be need for 3,322 additional elementary pupil places in Milton. And if it doesn't happen, we'll have a utilization rate of about 134%. So there is going to be a significant demand in that community. Halton Hills is not really facing any major accommodation pressures. It has some infill development in South Georgetown and some rural estate development. Again, the area is projected to have about 1,150 available pupil places by 2025 with a utilization rate of 79%. However, the town council has approved the expansion of the urban boundary area west of 8th Line to Trafalgar Road and north of 10th Side Road. Preliminary indications are that there's going to be about 6,600 residential units with a projected population of about 19,000 by 2031, with construction starting in 2021. Staff has been meeting with the town on location of school sites, which have currently been identified as 3 elementary school sites and 1 secondary school site in the Georgetown Vision area. So the number in terms of the long-term projections indicates that we'll have empty pupil places, but there will be a need for additional schools as a result of Georgetown Vision. Burlington Secondary. This has been an ongoing issue for the last number of years. Again, the opening of Dr. Frank J. Hayden contributed to an overall surplus of pupil places in Burlington. Currently, there are about 1,890 available secondary pupil places in Burlington, and it's more or less going to be stable over the next 10 years. And there should be about 1,920 available pupil places with an overall utilization rate of 74%. And again, as we've mentioned in the past, there should be some consideration to the potential of undertaking a program and accommodation review for all secondary schools in Burlington. Again, the opening of Garth Webb resulted in reasonable utilization rates for Oakville. And enrollments are projected to increase over the next 10 years. And again, the overall utilization rate will be 110%. An additional 770 pupil places are projected to be needed by 2025. And again, most of those spaces will be required for North Oakville, where 2 secondary schools are planned. And projections indicate that the next, or the first secondary school in North Oakville will be Northeast Oakville, should be number 1 high school, not number 2. And it will be required by 2020-2021. In terms of Milton, again, with the high enrollment in the elementary panel, that will, again, transfer into the secondary panel. And we're projecting an overall utilization rate of about 169% by 2025, with a shortfall of 1,532 pupil places. And we've indicated that there's a need for the 3rd secondary school in Milton by 2019-2020 to accommodate the growth in Milton. Again, Halton Hills Secondary, nothing in the next 4 years. The existing schools will be able to accommodate the enrollment growth within the community. And again, if nothing is done over the next 10 years and Georgetown, Vision Georgetown does not occur, we'll have a utilization rate of 82% by 2025. Proposed school boundary reviews. Well, we definitely have to move forward with the Martin Street Public School as a result of the reconstruction and the fact that the school will be opening with 770 pupil places, and we need to ensure that that school is filled. However, at the same time, and nothing else has been added, mainly because the board, we're still waiting for the board-approved recommendations from the program viability review, and that may necessitate the need for future boundary reviews. Again, that outcome is, we don't know. We can't suppose what's going to happen, but once those decisions are made by the board in June, we'll get a clear understanding of what boundary reviews will have to be undertaken in the future. So our proposed capital initiatives that we're identifying over the next 4 years is the Milton number 10 public school for 2018-2019, the Oakville number 2 public school for 2018-2019, new high school in Milton for 2019-2020, another Milton Elementary School in 2020-21, and a high school in Northeast Oakville in 2020-2021. And submissions are generally requested in the spring, summer from the ministry, with their approvals anticipated in the fall of 2016. that's more or less based on what happened last year, and what we're hearing again from the ministry is that they'll follow the same process. Next steps. Well, subsequent to tonight's meeting, we'll be posting the PowerPoint presentation tonight on the website. Notice will be placed in local newspapers. As well, we'll be sending out email, Center Voice, and press releases requesting the public and community to provide feedback. We will be requesting feedback by April 27th, and then staff will report back at the first meeting in May 4th, and we'll provide them with the feedback that's been collected and summarized. And then once approved by trustees, the LTAP will be forwarded to the Ministry of Education. As well, we will notify all the entities in the Community Planning Partnerships notification list of the LTAP that the LTAP has been approved, and directing to the board's website to review the electronic document just for their own planning purposes and interests moving forward with any potential partnerships that may occur in the future. And glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. And I must say, having looked through this whole document, that is probably the best laid out and easiest to read that I have ever seen in all my years as a trustee. So thank you very much to all of you involved in making this document the way it is, and everyone that is not here as well. It really is a testament to improvements every year, and this year is definitely the best in my opinion. Are there any comments or questions for our presenters tonight? Trustee Collard.
Thank you. And echoing the chair's comments, an absolutely stunning job. It's much easier to read every single year, and we get more and more information from it, so it's a pleasure to read. My comments are in reference to page 3 of the report. There are 2 places where there is mention of a phase-in of the primary gifted program. And I just wanted to make sure that we have corrected for the next meeting. The gifted placement is not a program. It is a placement that is governed by the IPRC process. And we no longer have a delineation between primary and the grade 5 to 8. It is one placement. However, it sometimes is split into 2 different schools just for accommodation purposes. So it's no longer a primary versus a 5 to 8 program. It is a gifted placement. Thanks.
We will make the changes, not only in the board report, but the LTAP itself, because there's a lot of references to the program aspects, so we will make those changes before it comes back to the board in May.
I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much. I really like the full report. I think it's an excellent summary of the data and excellent synopsis of the information for us and for our school communities. I also really like the staff report, which quickly summarizes and all the information and helps to pinpoint what the kind of pressures are at which schools and through which areas. With respect to the presentation, I just have a point of clarification for Oakville. It stated that 2 new secondary schools would be required in North Oakville, and I take that to mean Northeast Oakville, correct?
Correct. It's the Northeast Oakville Secondary Plan area, so basically the area east of 60 Mile Creek to Trafalgar, past Trafalgar to 9th line.
Okay, and to follow up, given the anticipated development north of Dundas in Northwest, so kind of north of Ward 4, is there any thought about how those students will be accommodated? Does that cause pressure?
Basically northwest, are you referring to the north of Dundas Street? That area is more or less employment lands. So there is, with the exception of some pockets of, they're looking at some residential development right adjacent to the hospital, but most of the land is is all for employment lands, extending from the Burlington border right to 16 Mile Creek, with the exception of a small pocket of high-density residential development right next to the hospital. Did you want to add any? Is that? No, we can't reach it.
There is also talk of the, I guess what they're calling the Palermo Hub, which is along Regional Road 25 and north of Dundas. At this point in time, there is expected some high-density residential. I do know that piece of the secondary plan is at the OMB, and at this point, there's they don't really know how many people are or how many units are expected to be built in that area since it's still at the board. But in any case, those numbers have not been included in any of the projections, and it's unknown in terms of what the impact of that area will be.
Okay. And is there a date by which we might know what those numbers will be? We don't know that. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd just like to echo Trustee Oliver's comments, and thank you for that. I think as the LTAP improves, we've seen an increase in usage from the community, and I think that certainly from a partnership perspective, allowing the community access to this really important document helps them, be aware of what the issues are affecting our board. And so that we're sharing this information transparently, and that they know what it looks like. I'd just like to restate the obvious, and particularly for the Burlington secondary school community, which, as your presentation so well pointed out, while Halton is increasing in population, we have a decrease in our high school populations in the Burlington area. And the report, once again, recommends that we undergo a PAR for this community. So while I'm restating the obvious, I do want to remind our board that in Burlington, our coterminous board is undergoing a school PAR as well at the elementary level, though, not at the high school level. So there's a lot of sensitivities around this, and I just wanted to bring this up in an effort to ask the director if he could speak to the timeline for the ARC announcements, and whether there's further information that we can share with our public so that they can follow this process with us. Thank you.
Director Miller?
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Reynolds and to all trustees. And Senior Manager Renzella will jump in if I'm incorrect in my information. But once the LTAP is approved and goes to the ministry for approval, we will then undergo a community consultation process as per the new policy around CPP. And when that comes in, that would likely be May, June-ish when that comes. So we would not anticipate any recommendation coming before this board, prior to September of the new school year. So we're looking hopefully early September, but if not, late September for any kind of announcement around a park.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to expand on the Arcoterminus Board's process. As you can well imagine, it's a pretty sensitive process. My discussions with the Coterminus Board has been, the community has been totally taken by surprise. And I have to say that, they do not do a long-term accommodation plan, so their communities have not been aware of this tsunami of empty people places. So the last one they did was a few years ago, and now they're starting to revisit that. So we've been more or less over the last number of years been advising the community that this is coming, and so they've become aware of that, and so they should not be surprised that something will be coming from the board.
Thank you. Follow-up, Trustee Reynolds?
Yes, thank you. I just would like to thank our board kindly for that, because part of our efforts to be very transparent, be very proactive in sharing this information and engaging them in our efforts is, I think, huge to the work that we're doing. And while this is not always an easy conversation, we're completely open with it, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Miller.
And through you, Chair Amos, to all trustees, I just wanted to say publicly that there have been rumors out there, and there are rumors about particular school closures or openings or consolidations, and I want to assure the public that we have not entered into any of those conversations yet, and we would not enter into any of those conversations before a recommendation appeared in front of the trustees. So when you, I know that many of us have heard those rumors. I can categorically say that they are those rumors are exactly that. The rumors are untrue. We have had no conversations at this point.
And just to clarify, the recommendation initially would be just to have a program and accommodation review. It wouldn't be about any school in particular.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. Through the chair, my question had to do with the PAR review for secondary schools in Burlington, so I thank you for clarifying that for us.
Thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation and for all of the information in the LTAP. My questions are related to Southwest number 1, and Trustee Reynolds over there asked a lot of the questions that I was going to in terms of the relationship between this document and the initiation of a potential PAR. So I just wanted to confirm with Director Miller whether you were thinking the potential timeline of bringing such a report would be similar or different, or?
Director Miller.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee L. Harrison and all trustees, the timeline would be essentially the same. It might vary by a month or two. There is one caveat to all this, and that's the work of the Program Viability Committee, as that may have an impact on how we deliver French immersion and where those schools will be and so on. So that recommendation will be coming to the board, I believe, in May. And then that we'd have a better idea. But the timelines for Southwest Oakville are essentially the same. If they vary by a few weeks.
Can I follow up?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So one of the things that I heard when I first was fortunate enough to come to this chair is just around our projection methodology and the accuracy of our projections. And since that time, you have been very proactive in terms of posting our methodology online. In response to a query that I made, it was noted by yourselves that you meet with staff from around the province, and our methodology does reflect best practices out there. And I was just wondering whether you could comment on, I guess, the accuracy of those projections over the last couple of years. So that is, how do they stack up to what actually happens? So our projection is what it is today. How well have we done? Thanks.
Mr. Randall?
This question comes up every year, and as I said, if we could predict the future, we would be all driving Ferraris and having our name in the Panama banking system. But anyways, generally speaking, it's hard to predict the accuracy overall. Let's say last year we were off in terms of projections for this year by, at the elementary panel, it was maybe 100 students. And at the secondary panel, it was probably less than that. So we are really, as you move forward in the projections, of course, there's other variables that come about. So, but I would say we're 99% accurate.
Thank you. Trustee Graves.
Thank you. part of my comments through you, Chair, is to thank all three of you for coming to speak to us. I know because of the weather there was a delay. Mr. Renzella wasn't able to join us, but the discussion we had at the Committee of the Whole was excellent, and I know you didn't even get through your presentation before we got into a great sort of conversation with trustees, which is a testament to the hard work that the trustees do in looking through this very, very carefully. And I see a lot of the comments and questions reflected in this updated version, which I think makes it more readable for the public. So I want to thank you very much. This is an excellent document. And then for the second part, obviously I think the document clearly outlines the pressures that Milton is facing in the next few years. So I want to thank you for highlighting that very clearly. And I'm looking forward to the ministry requests for capital projects and ultimately approval for new schools in Milton. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to just make a comment about the projection rate of accuracy tonight. That's amazing, and I'm wondering if that could leverage anything into a lottery ticket or something, if you could help us with that. But that being the case, that is amazing, and it is an extremely complex and very difficult process to come up with an enrollment projection across the board, across so many regions of geography and with so many different circumstances happening. So congratulations to you and your team on that commendable projection rate of accuracy. My question relates to page 9 of the report tonight, paragraph 3 at the top, and it's just a quick question about Georgetown South number 3 public school, which has been identified on the east side of Mountain View. Now, in the paragraph above, we look at Ethel Gardner continuing to require portables over the next 10 years with an OTG utilization at about 124%. In your next paragraph, you talk about Georgetown South really being really the timing of that being associated with the accommodation pressures, and you're referring to it as the development of the Vision Georgetown area. But I'm wondering too, though, wouldn't it also somewhat be considered for the accommodation pressures that we see already in your projections over at Ethel Gardner, and couldn't that also be accommodated in this report? I guess the second question I would have would be 124%. What are we comfortable with in terms of OTG over a long period of time?
Let me go to the first question. And I think what we're looking at is, and implicitly we could maybe identify those other schools as part of that analysis. We envision that with the opening of Vision Georgetown, there is likely going to be and typically is with new development, a delay in terms of when the students show up, which usually is first, and the time frame in which new schools are built. So there is that time delay, and we know that in order we have to accommodate the students somewhere. They're either going to go into Ethel Gardner, Silver Creek, which may then push some accommodation into the Georgetown number 3 school site. So that's what we're implying. Maybe we can spruce it up a bit and clear it up to kind of reflect that. The number one, in terms of the second question, the utilization is basically, and I don't know what it is in terms of the school itself, Ethel Gardner, but basically we do plan for up to 12 portables on a school site, and that could push the school up to 130, 35%. Our biggest concern is once it pierces the 12 maximum on a school that we run into some problems. And as you can see as well, Silver Creek enrollment is declining. So if there is any challenges there, we could maybe do some boundary changes between the two. But Vision Georgetown is probably the biggest question mark at this point in time, is what's going to happen and how is it going to impact on those adjacent and neighboring schools.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. I have one comment and a question. in many of the different areas, it talks about, trying to find the quote here, decisions made by the school principal could potentially increase classroom availability. That's a phrase that I saw in a few places, and I was just wondering if you could elaborate. I think I know what it means, but perhaps you could elaborate, and then I'll ask my question.
The former director told me to put that in there. A lot of times there's some
You know he's sitting behind you.
a lot of times there, and if I recall, there is a lot to do with the secondary schools. There is some flexibility in terms of timetabling and lunches and whatnot, that they're able to increase the flexibility. And in other cases at the elementary panel, not many, that they may be able to use classes that may be designated for a spec ed room, and there's no special education class at that school, so they could be used. So, that they can use that in terms of their discretion.
Dr. Miller.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Harvey Hope. To be a little more specific, many of our secondary schools, and there are very good community reasons and cultural reasons in secondary schools to have single lunches, but sometimes a single lunch may put pressure on the ability to utilize classrooms. When you have two lunch periods, that obviously you can spread out over a lunch period and so on. So that's one example, a more specific example around that. But I would emphasize that there are real good reasons for doing single lunches, and some of the principals around the table here could give you those if you ever want them.
Former principals.
Principals, I mean.
So my question is about ERA 113. And EJ has 6 portables. It was creeping up slowly, and I'm expecting that bulge any time now, since we've had 4 grade 1 classes for quite a long time. So it says in there that you're working on it. Could you tell us what you're working on? Because September is coming fast.
Well, facility services is working on it, but interesting enough, I got confirmation just before the meeting that they can accommodate up to 10 portables on the school. And that has to do with a significant upgrade to the electrical system. Yeah. So anyways, they have, we found that we've been able, or facility services has identified that the school can go up to 10 portables. But we just found out just today, this afternoon.
So that means that there is a windfall from the park that we did and the upgrade to the electrical at the time. So, okay.
Director Miller?
We'll have to see how that plays out.
I would just like to say thank you, Senior Manager Renzella, for giving us that information. The sweat beads were up here about EJ James, so we're good to go. Let's pack them in.
Or case that we might get the staff room back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gervens.
Hi, this is just with respect to the, just clarification actually, with respect to the developments that are in North Burlington, and if they have been included in the projections, because I'm sure a lot of the public want to know that.
Yes. Yeah. And there, of course, there's always lots of development in North Burlington. The MB development, which is west of Walker's, north of Dundas Street, the little triangle, that has been included because they've had a draft plan of subdivision on that site for a number of years. The Evergreen development, which is at Tremaine, north of Dundas, just on the west side of Tremaine, has not been included because we have not got any detailed information, and it's not been approved by the municipality at this point in time. And anything else, such as the application for those high density, they have not been included. Or they have? They have been included as part of the projections, yes. Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. So on the flip side, when we look at the underground OTG capacity and over and underutilization, is there kind of a threshold for underutilization at which point we say we need to look at the school?
In what respect? You know, we currently in our board policies on program and accommodation review, one of the criteria looking at school closures is 60%. And a lot of it has to do now with ministry funding and how they've starting to claw back on the funding. So 60% is one. Now, we have to also look at that in the context of how the neighboring schools are. Are they overcrowded? Can we do some boundary changes in order to accommodate some of the overflow, and or if they're over capacity, and which we have done in the past, you know. You know, those are, but if there is no if there's no additional students to relocate to that school, that would come under a program and accommodation review. But if there is an opportunity where we have underutilized space and there's overutilized schools adjacent to it, there's a strong, we could move forward with that. Again, that also depends on the will of trustees and the will of the community, because we've had some communities who've come to us and said, we love portables, don't move us. And so I think we've taken the position, you know, just to kind of keep it relatively consistent. But again, as Director Miller has mentioned, we are moving forward with this program and viability. So this whole question of underutilized space, and especially at the elementary panel, is going to be really interesting in terms of what may or may not happen moving forward.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Sorry, just a follow-up. Since the information that you just gave me to the answer to my question is literally hours old, are we going to update this LTAP document to change that little number and make red go to black for the next version? Or are we, I mean, I don't know what the plan was. And then I guess just my request to facility services, when we put the 7th and maybe 8th portable, we've been zigzagging across the property the last couple of years. If perhaps we could just be careful how we line them up so that the sight lines, because and I think it's to do with how far you have to be from the building, and the building has a little indent. But anyway, the idea being, I'm trying to fictionalize where they're going to put these number 7, 8, and 9. But in the meantime, right now it's like showing oh my goodness, where are we going to fit them in September? You've told me that's solved with putting in the order for another portable or two. So is this going to be updated?
We will try to make the changes. Some of the smaller changes can be made right away. Our biggest challenge is going to be making all the changes and going through the document with respect to the gifted placement program wording and whatnot. So we'll see what we can do. And it doesn't, you know, I don't think, I think the numbers will be the major consideration. You know, we can update the other document wording moving forward. Yeah. So, and again, it's a living document, and anytime we make a change to the document, we'll make sure that it's identified in the LTAP and on the website.
Thank you. And seeing no other speakers, I have one. Regarding ERA 118, it says that the alternative relief would be River Oaks Public School and Munns Public School. And I had thought that would be Sunningdale, because until it goes to the other side of Trafalgar, then it would capture the students from that side, and then they would go. But on the west side of Trafalgar, they should probably stay within the same community, and I had thought that was supposed to be Sunningdale.
You're referring to the new school?
No, it says that the news. The new school will provide relief to River Oaks Public School and Munns Public School. But Munns Public School is only east of Trafalgar.
And you're absolutely correct. East of Trafalgar Road is coming on faster.
Oh, I know. I see it every day.
So, and so, as you're well aware, Munns has its own critical capacities, and we'll need to look at it in the context of if and when we get approval from the ministry, that
maybe they're listening.
That we would include the Munns and River Oaks as part of that analysis. So yes, so that's what.
But if homes come online in that area in the short term, they would be going, before a new school's built, they'll be going to River Oaks and Sunningdale or Munns, dependent on where they live, right? So
correct.
So there's may need to be some relief to Sunningdale as well.
Sorry, if you're talking about west of Trafalgar, for French immersion, they go to Udanawe.
Well, so that whole area's now been...
So no one from north of Dundas should be going to Sunningdale.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yes, because that boundary for the French immersion Udanawe goes right up to Trafalgar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So,
good. Thank you
yes.
for the clarification.
Yeah.
Okay. So it would be the 9th line piece, and everyone right now will still go to White Oaks until the new high school's built. Okay. Which we may need sooner than later, the way it's growing too. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Director Miller.
Yeah, I just sure wish there was some people in the ministry here tonight so that they could hear some of those comments.
I'd like to invite them to drive along Dundas and then maybe along into Milton. But you have to go all the way to Trafalgar and then not. Anyways, thank you for coming tonight. Seeing no other comments or questions, thank you very much for your presentation tonight and coming. You've heard from many of us, thank you very much. This document is fantastic. I believe the public will be able to go through it, and it's very plain and easy to understand. And we will make sure that everyone out there will tweet and will share the fact that it's on the website and that you're looking for feedback. So thank you very much. So our next item is information items, and the first one is our multi-year plan draft. Myself, Director Miller, and our facilitator, former Director Uwali, report 16063 on page 25 of your board package. Would the former director like to come up to speak to it, or are you just here for questions? Okay, Director Miller will speak to it.
Thank you. I actually meant to thank Dom and those as well, but I was so concentrating on my joke that it didn't work out. But, I want to thank former Director Uwali and all the trustees, and in particular the writing team. This is a draft, and the intent is that we will work on this on Sunday and Monday, where we will all look at this. Appendix B is really what you want to look at. In particular, you know, there's the mission, vision, and values, but you'll notice that in the values we have added a value, and that's equity. So this will form the focus of our conversation on the first day for sure of our all-day meeting on Sunday. And again, I just want to thank the writing team and all the trustees and all the participants that, as you've seen all the comments there from, we've had our union leaders, we've had program leaders, we've had representatives of our communities all contribute to this, and going through it was a pleasant process. Because you could see a lot of people are all thinking the same, and so it's heartening to know that here in the Halton board, a lot of people think the same way and have the same values. So But again, like I said, this is draft copy, a working copy for us to work further on the weekend. That's it.
And just further to Director Miller's comments, I'd like to echo his thanks to everyone involved. And we did hear that everybody liked what we had started with, but there was ways to make it better. And so this is here for the transparency piece, because we had so many people involved in the community, so that they could see what sort of the next step is. This may not be where we end, because we, as Director Miller said, that we're going to have more discussion on it, and then we're going to be going out to the public as well with it. So this is just an intermediary step, and so it gives us all a point of reference to speak to. And so thank you very much to everyone who's provided input. And I'm looking forward to the 2 days of that we're going to have around this, and working on the multi-year plan. Did you have any comments, or did you want to say anything before we have questions or comments?
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to thank the writing team as well, and particularly Gail Gortmaker for she's the one that collected all the ideas from the previous meetings. And I will tell you that the writing team did take all those comments into consideration, and I think, in my opinion, many of the most important concepts that came out of that brainstorming sessions are reflected in some of the suggestions and modifications made, including the issue of equity being a fourth value. That was a fairly big step, and the concept that what may have been perfectly appropriate 5 years ago is no longer appropriate because the times have changed. So it's subject to yet another possible revision on the Sunday and Monday, and hopefully in short order you will have a brand new mission, vision, and value statement.
Thank you. So comments and questions on this report tonight. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I sincerely appreciate the addition of the fourth value of equity. I think this board has done so much work in equity areas, and to not have that separate as a value, I think it was missing. And yes, 5 years ago, we embedded it, but it's time to bring it out and highlight it. So I'm very pleased to see that. I won't get into the meat and potatoes of what's on there, because that's the work that's ahead of us. So I don't want to comment on any of the content other than just to thank you for making equity a highlight of our values.
Thank you. Trustee Daniele.
I was just going to say the same thing about equity. So I'm very pleased to see it included. And thank you for those comments about the transparency piece and why that's in there, because I will admit I found it disturbing that it was made public before it was ever shared with trustees. And so and I think the work that's in here is exceptional, really, really exceptional. But because it's been shared publicly, I hesitate to change it on Sunday. I would have preferred that it was presented as a preamble to the trustees, and then when we had something, we'd all work together on it inclusively, then it was presented to the public. So that would have been my preferences, but I do appreciate your comments at the beginning of this.
Thank you. Trustee Graves.
Thank you. My question is perhaps it extends a little bit beyond mission, vision, and values and to the multi-year plan as a whole. I know I have some community members who are quite interested in this, and I was just wondering if someone could speak to the ability for the public, or when the public will might be brought in on some of these pieces, either around mission, vision, and values, or just in general the multi-year plan.
I believe that we're going out to the community for input after we've done our sessions and tried to create the values that go with these pieces as well. So we'll be opening up to the group that has previously given us some feedback, as well as making sure that community members through the website and through the use of media will be able to have some input as well. Director Miller, do you have any comments to add? Or?
No, I think that the plan is to give the groups that we brought together an updated version for comment, and then ultimately, prior to it being passed by the board, I would imagine it would be posted for a period of time so that the community could comment.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Gebenz.
Thank you, Chair Amos. I just wanted to thank the team for taking all that time to sort of formulate, basically I sort of see it as a set of guidelines for us to work towards. I know that it does take a lot of work to be able to pull that all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on Director Miller?
And my only comment is just a reminder to trustees that and senior admin that we're all day Sunday here, 9 till 5. There's apparently some mini golf on TV that day, and then again on Monday we're at M.M. Robinson Library though on Monday from 9 to 5. And the reason we've gone to there is so that the senior admin is out of the building and trustees, because people come and ask us questions and pull us out, so we go there. So, and I'm in the windmill hole on the.
And everybody knows now that we're going to be there. Anyways. The student trustees are invited for both days. That's why you've been included in the email. So, and our facilitator will be sending out the agenda tomorrow, I believe, so everyone will get a copy of that later tonight. That's even better. Oh, okay. So yes, we would love your to be part of this. So thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming tonight, David.
Thank you.
And we will see you on Sunday. And you're bringing all the coffee? Okay. Thank you. Our next item is sick leave usage. Executive Officer McFadden, Report 160059 on page 31 of your board package. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos. For all trustees, Executive Officer McFadden could not be here this evening. The main point of this is because this became a Globe and Mail front page article about sick leave increasing around the province, we wanted to demonstrate that, in fact, in Halton, it has not increased, that there has been a change, and the change has been on a downward, that our staff, as professional as they always are at work. Because Executive Officer McFadden is not here tonight, what I prefer to do, I could try to answer some questions, and I'm looking at senior men, maybe some of them can, but otherwise we'll record the questions and we'll get the answers back to the board at the next board meeting in a public setting so that people would know whether Executive Officer McFadden's here or not, we'll get the answers to you in the public venue.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions to this report tonight? Trustee L. Harrison.
Thanks very much. So these statistics look really good. My question is, I'm just curious about what the high points of this program are, the attendance management program. Like, what does that mean? And also, how are employees supported? So our numbers have gone down, and I just wonder what measures we're taking to support our employees.
I think we'll just refer that to Executive Officer McFadden. I don't want to speculate on what the answers are.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Just on that topic, I think there's a report we could probably reference from when it was implemented that the trustees were explained what it was. But also those of us that went to the OPSPA Labor Relations meeting last week? Yeah, was it only last? Yeah, last week. The workshop on the Thursday afternoon one of the topics was attendance management. So we will be circulating the information that we had, and that was a discussion of what they are, how they work, that kind of thing. And the idea being that it's more of in the wellness kind of doing the things you need to support your staff rather than being punitive. So to keep that in mind, and that it's not a punitive thing, it's a helpful thing. And in our case, we've had one longer than others because this workshop was to some extent explaining to some boards, why would one do it. So I look forward to the update that Executive Officer McFadden will give us, and also we'll circulate what information we were given and the interaction between that and some of the other topics that we talked about at the Labor Relations.
Director Miller.
Through Chair Amos to Trustee Harvey Hope and all trustees. What we will do is we've recorded those questions, and we'll read them out in public at the next board meeting, and then Executive Officer McFadden will address them. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this topic tonight? Seeing none, other than it's a good news report for Halton, the fact that we don't have some problems that some of the other boards have, so that's a very good thing. Sorry. Our next item is the Elementary School Design Guidelines, Superintendent Cullen, Report 16060 on page 35 of your board package. Welcome, Superintendent Cullen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report has been posted electronically because, as you can see, it's several, I'll say 100 pages of documentation attempting to capture the work of the architect and our teams to put together the guidelines. Trustees will hopefully recall that it is our intent to use these guidelines for our next new elementary school, and then hopefully carry on from there with a bit of a pattern and an evolution in design. That would hopefully be the Milton 10 project that has been slated for Milton, and that would then, I guess, put these guidelines to its first actual test. The guideline is, in fact, a guideline. We would intend to develop it and continue to use it as a living document, make changes as we go. At this point in time, it has been shared with the senior team and the trustees, and our next phase in the release, if you will be to a lot of the school staff that had input, and then therefore they would be able to see what influence they had over different sections of the building or its design, and we would roll that out shortly to them to have it available for, again, comment. So it's not really a consultation process at this stage as much as it is, I think, beginning the evolution of commenting on the base platform that we've created. I'd be happy to take any questions related to the process or the document, although I will suggest I'm not really looking forward to going through page by page commenting on each item. But as trustees or staff see items in schools in particular, it's a great way to go back and be able to check, is that now captured in the document, or should it be something that gets captured in the document? Might be very useful in that regard. So we'll take any questions related to that, and it has been posted to trustees electronically.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Superintendent Cullen on the Elementary School Designs Guideline? I know it's a hefty document. I opened it up and I started going through it, and I think it's great that we're going to have this, and the fact that it's going to be a living document, and it'll give us something that we can use for consistency between our projects. So thank you for having it done, and I'll look forward to seeing how it works. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. It's been a while since I looked at the document in any detail, but I'm wondering if there is any direction around when schools are oriented on the lot, especially in areas of heavy traffic and air pollution, that there's thought given to the play area being furthest away from the pollution zone.
The chair to the trustee, there's a couple of aspects related to the use of the site, and again, because it's a guideline, we don't have a specific site to work to, so there's a couple of drawings in the package that indicate what we've referred to as a typical configuration. So a lot of cases, a park located on one side of the school or the other will tend to change the orientation for those purposes. If there's any plantings or natural vegetation that we can take advantage of, those are always nice to have on the site if we can make use of that, particularly for shade. We've looked at a lot of the junior kindergarten play areas in particular about shading. The heat being probably the more predominant driver than the pollution aspect at this stage. It's not that we don't take it into consideration, but the heat one has kind of been the bigger issue to try and address, although we have looked at structures to try and deal with potentially some of the shade issues as well. Road orientation, whether it's a straight section of road, a curved road, the caliber of the road, whether there's a side road to the adjacent property or just the front road, also have drivers in that. So I would say that in the document itself at this time, we've put in a typical configuration with some of those considerations, and many of those things are influenced by the site plan process. So when we go to the municipality, the approval process and criteria we have to meet tend to have a big influence over where the parking lot might be in relationship to the adjacent residential units, or where the playground might be in relation to a park or an access point. So there's a lot of puzzle pieces that go in. So it is a consideration. I don't want to downplay it at all, but there are some other ones that get put into the mix as well that try and do that for that particular aspect. I would say the one that we've really focused on has been shading, and some of the natural vegetation. If we can get those combinations on the site, those are really helpful, and also help the pollution issue as well. They contribute.
Okay. Go ahead.
So in cases where there's a bit of a discrepancy with what would be ideal for the students and what the municipality regulation or bylaw stipulates, is there room for negotiation?
Through the chair to the trustee, we've spent countless hours having those negotiations, and I would say for the most part, the municipality's primary client or concern is the residents. If there happen to be existing residential units in the area and the school comes in after, there's a lot of weight given to the concerns of the residents. If we're building in a relatively new neighborhood or a brand new neighborhood where there are no residents, then we tend to be able to use the things that suit the school better than, because it's the only real measure, if you will, of that. So yes, there's certainly the opportunity to have the conversations. For the most part, I don't believe that we've ever accepted a change or a submission that we can't live with. But I have seen compromises made on both sides of many of the issues over time. But the municipal process tends to be more one of protection of the existing residents, more so than the ideal school configuration. Okay.
Thank you. Just so that trustees are aware, it is under the JWS True Board of Trustees group that it was sent to you as a link, because not everybody is accessing our groups. So I just wanted to let you know that's... Oh, and Elaine also, no, she sent it to the group. That's how she did it. Oh, sorry. Okay. The email was from Elaine Westerhoff, and she sent it through that group. So if you aren't going to the group or forwarding those emails, you'll have to go into it. Thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is about, are there any provisions in the design guidelines for school councils? I know that my experience anyway is that often school councils are afforded a room for the good stuff that they do and to store the equipment that they use on an ongoing basis. Often there's refrigerators in there or a freezer, for example, and I just wouldn't like to see them get shut out because they play a really useful and great role in our schools, and I don't see it on the list.
Through the chair, at this point, I would have to check and see whether it is. We have talked about creating a community room, provisions for that. I don't recall specifically if it was equipped or set up to be equipped with refrigerators and I'll say kitchen type appliances at this point. I'd have to check that one and see. Okay, can do that.
Thank you, Trustee Gray.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Cullen. Are you satisfied that the guidelines that, as they exist at this time, and I know that it is a living document, I'm very happy about that, but that they give adequate attention to environmental impacts of construction and ongoing maintenance and so on and so forth with any school building?
Thank you for that question. There's two parts to that one that really relate to, this is, as much as it's a relatively new process that we've done this time, it still is an evolution of all of the work that we've done to date and all of the learning that has occurred around products and around their environmental impact and on their sustainability and those types of things. So it's not like we went out and got a brand new plan. We really started with a lot of the puzzle pieces that we've been able to develop over the years with our ongoing construction program. So there's a good part of the, I'll say, the product pieces that I'm certainly comfortable with. The other parts that we brought in relate to the whole environmental issues of sustainability and our learning on the One LEED program that we did do. So we did do one of our schools, as you know, to the LEED standard. We've been able to incorporate not just design guidelines here, but procedural ones. There are many of the elements of the LEED process that relate to the procedure that you follow to get to a certain point as opposed to the actual item itself. So for instance, ductwork arriving on a site that could be full of debris is a problem. Ductwork that gets sealed at the factory after it's built and delivered in that format comes to the site relatively clean, and you don't have that same problem. So there's procedural pieces as well as product pieces. They have been incorporated in here. So at this stage, I would have to say I'm relatively comfortable that they have been addressed. We have not gone to the extent that I would think some of the high-level expectations of green roof and those types of things, and we can have great conversations about why or why not, but those aren't there, but they've certainly been considered as part of the process in reviewing it to this point.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I do have one question. When will the guidelines be available for the, after the principals have had a chance to see them, for other staff to be able to view them?
We think at this point our next step will be complete the index. So there's a lot of page numbers and reference number things that just so the content is done, at least at this stage. There's an index or an inventory, if you will, to make it easier for people to do searches of. So when you look at the specific rooms, an index of the room, then a reference page number, those kinds of things. So we'll create that index during the time that our senior senior school staff are looking at it, as well as the program staff. So I would think probably within a month we'd be able to make it, I would say, available to the general public with all of those pieces in it.
Okay. Thank you. General public as opposed to school like just within schools and...
Sorry, at this stage, our next audience would be principals and our program staff, which to me is anybody at the school level. So principals at that point would be able to share it with school classroom staff. Beyond that, it would be open to the public, the broader public.
When's the timelines to be shared with the principals and that kind of thing?
We can do that virtually immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. We wanted trustees to, of course, have some opportunity to see it first.
Thank you. Director Miller? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Superintendent Cullen. And seeing no further questions on this, thank you very much for bringing this report tonight. So our next item is the board report schedule update. Director Miller, report 16058 on page 37 of the board package. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos. There's a few changes. Center for Skills Development Training was to be for May the 4th. It's been moved to May 18th, and we should have things in order for the report by that point. The Community Partnership Report, which is what we mentioned earlier in the LTAP, that would be coming to the board June 1st after we've done our consultations. And I think this, I'm not sure if we had talked about this before, but the Ombudsman Process Review, that should be coming either the first or second meeting in June. So the 1st or the 15th. And then Administrative Procedure Review is ongoing. And finally, the one around location of spec ed classes, we're anticipating June.
Thank you. comments or questions for the director? Trustee Collard.
I just wanted to thank the director and Ms. Gortmaker for updating and making additions and corrections to the report list. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to this tonight? Seeing none, thank you very much, Director Miller. So we are now up to our committee reports. Do we have any committee reports tonight? Trustee Collard.
Yes, SEAC met last night, and there was a very lengthy discussion about the budget and possible changes to the program delivery method for some of our special education programs and services. And that conversation will be continued at our next meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Gerbens.
Just letting you know that the fundraising policy subcommittee met today, actually, and we've got meeting dates set for 2 weeks from now and 2 weeks after that, and we're hoping to move quickly but diligently on this.
Thank you. Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. The Program Viability Committee met on Monday, April the 4th, and we reviewed the parameters and data and options that we have moving forward. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, April the 19th.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Just a reminder that Audit Committee is next Tuesday, the 12th at 5 o'clock, and the agenda package will be coming out later this week. Most of it will be public session in the way we're trying the new method. The public is welcome to come. I guess we'll have to play it by ear if we get overcrowded in the small room we usually use, but public is available to come. It will not be podcast or anything like that. So, but the public is welcome, and the package will be posted. So, we're going to give this a shot, and we'll see how it plays out. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Chair Graves.
The Committee of the Whole met on March 30th. The major topics for discussion that evening were an overview of the communications audit, trustee code of conduct, which will come back to Committee of the Whole again before it goes to board, and a greater discussion on the bylaws with respect to standing committees. So I'll invite any of the chairs of those committees to discuss more at length if they wish.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on any of those topics? Seeing none, is there any other speakers to the committee reports tonight? No. Vice Chair Graves.
Upcoming Committee of the Whole for the next 2 or 3 meetings is budget, and budget, and the community is welcome at those meetings. Thank you.
And we know that Superintendent Veerman is getting all organized so that she can tutor us through the whole budget process, especially with some of our challenges, right? We're all looking forward to it. So our next item is the director's report. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos. I don't have a lot to report tonight. I just wanted to let trustees know that many of you, I want to thank you if you were able to, and some of you weren't able to, but you would have liked to, I'm sure, is be a judge at the skills competition yesterday. It was a fantastic event. I don't know, 1,000-something kids from our board and the Catholic board, and a really neat event. I think it's one of the highlights of the calendar in our board. So I want to thank trustees for taking the time to either judge, show up, support the kids in any way you did. And for those of you that were unable to do it for whatever reason, if you're able to do it next year, it's a great opportunity. Also, this Thursday is Music Showcase in Hamilton Place. So again, I've been to many of those, emceed a few, and there's a new MC in town next tomorrow, Superintendent Hunt Gibbons. Looking forward to that. That's at Hamilton Place, and it's also a really fantastic event, for sure. There's no question. And then there's one other one, and I'm going to defer. We had a really neat thing happen that doesn't happen very often on our board from M.M. Robinson, and I'm going to defer to the trustee for M.M. Robinson.
So, I don't know if you can see this picture, but M.M. Robinson's students received the gold medal at the Canadian National Improv Games 2016. Yes, awesome. The Nationals were held in Ottawa this past weekend at the National Arts Centre, and I'd just like to acknowledge the teacher, Dina Zaken, and the students, Jack, Zach, Alec, Owen, Sarah, Emily, and Amanda. So congratulations.
That's awesome. Do you have anything else to?
I have one more, and I also want to compliment Georgetown's swim team, who takes on all comers, and I don't have the details in front of me, but they were OFSA champions in 8 years in a row. OFSA record, 8 years in a row. I think it started when I was principal there.
You think?
Yes. And I would say, being principal at Georgetown, the swim team was remarkable, and it was a real, and maybe Trustee Gray wants to comment, a real community draw. Parents, when they were swimming, I went to one of the competitions, or one of the times I went to a competition. I've been to other ones, and there were never anybody there to watch it. The pool was packed with people watching it, so it's 8 years in a row is a pretty remarkable feat.
Yes, if I could just comment that record of the team championship at OFSA for 8 years in a row is a new OFSA standard, and I know that the newspapers in the Halton Hills gave a lot of very, very positive press, but I was delighted also that the newspapers recognized the outstanding achievement and dedication and commitment of the teaching staff for making sure that program remains a very vibrant and strong program. At least one parent wrote into the editor of the newspaper to say that it was a transformative program and that it made a huge difference in the community of Georgetown. And so again, kudos to that community and to the teachers and volunteers involved in that entire program.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's it for my report.
Thank you. Wow, that's great news. Well, I had written down the skills, and I'd like to echo the comments of the director that it's a fantastic event, and I think every year it just gets better. I know that I judge the grade 7 and 8 film and video, and I'll tell you, the quality of the videos and the films and the capability of the students is just, every year just gets so much better, and the imagination and creativity and group work and problem solving, it's just such an awesome event. And when you go to all the different areas, and I know some of my fellow trustees either came and were judging or they came and watched, and just seeing the kids, it gets you all excited, and that's part of why we're trustees, to see that what these kids are doing. And the other piece is music showcase tomorrow is the other side of the brain, and it's also an awesome night, and if you get the chance, you should go, because it's such a diverse selection of students from across the system, again, from elementary to secondary, and it's wonderful music. So that's all I have. We're now up to trustee questions and comments. Trustee Daniele.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple. A reminder, I know trustees are all aware, but a reminder that the OPSPA Central West meeting is this weekend. And as well, OPSPA has opened the nomination process. If anybody is looking to sitting, currently you have in positions, you have Trustee Gray sitting on the policy work team, and I'm the Central West VP. But there are also positions opening. If you have positions on that, there's an education work team. There's first president, vice president, second vice president, president of OPSPA. So if anybody's got any interest in those, have a look at the OPSPA site or ask me. Second, I wanted to congratulate Milton District High School on extremely wonderful Taste of Milton. It was phenomenal. And many, many thanks. There was a large number of the senior team and trustees there, Trustee Graves, superintendents, Truffin, Newton, Podberick, Cullen, Associate Director Bogue. I hope I haven't missed anybody, along with Vice Chair Graves. It was really a fabulous evening, and to see that kind of support from the senior admin team was phenomenal. So thank you so much for that. And third and finally, I'd like to congratulate Sam Sherritt's school. They rocked it at last week's provincials and in Destination Imagination, and they are on their way to Tennessee next month. So very, very proud of them.
Great news. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of announcements to make. The first one starts with tomorrow night is also another special night in the city of Burlington, in that it is the annual Business Awards Gala. And tomorrow night, our very own Halton Learning Foundation has been selected as a finalist for a major award given by the Burlington Chamber of Commerce. So we wish them very well in that competition tomorrow night, and we look forward to seeing the results of that. So congratulations to the Halton Learning Foundation. Speaking of the HLF, I would have to want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that registration is now open for the annual fundraising golf tournament on June the 7th. And I know that at least 5 trustees are already registered, and we would like to be hoping that others might join us from senior admin. So that's going to be a wonderful day. And third and finally, from the HLF, I'd like to announce that it is the kickoff coming up very shortly of the Employee Payroll Deduction Program. And I just want to share a few facts, because I think it's very important that we recognize that not only is this the HLF being congratulated and recognized tomorrow in the city of Burlington, but I think as their impact affects the entire system, I'd like to just share a few bits of information right now. And that is that between September 2014 and 2016, the Halton Learning Foundation has been able to help over 1,500 students with emergency funding in our schools. Everything from helping with cover the cost of post-secondary school applications, specific activities in the schools, or even work clothes as students venture into the workplace. Foundation helps students from all walks of life who are experiencing financial difficulty. I think that that's a very, very important aspect of their programming and funding. And that this school year alone, the foundation has already supported schools by providing grants which totaled over $130,000. This funding has been directed towards environmental, arts, phys ed, and media literacy programs or projects in the schools. And these grants will impact over 60 schools and over 6,000 students. So that's simply amazing. But the need from the HLF is, of course, very large. And we know that the Halton Poverty Roundtable suggests that 1 in 10 youth in Halton region live below the regionally defined poverty line. And 1 in 10 students of the HDSB qualify as an at-risk or in-need student. So at this point, we need to ask ourselves, how can we help the HLF in their wonderful work in supporting our students here in Halton region? With the needs of our students constantly increasing, the foundation needs the help of the community to serve more students and in a more frequent basis. Who better, though, to set an example about the importance of giving to the Halton Learning Foundation than us, the trustees, the superintendents, the senior admin, principals, teachers, and all employees within the board. And so with that, the HLF is kicking off its annual employee payroll deduction program. Just think about this. If everyone in our board gave only $2 per pay, that would represent, because we have about 6,000 employees in this board, that would represent a very, very large commitment of money and would raise over $312,000. And again, that money would then be for the students in all of the Halton schools. And so as the need grows, we need more and more people to come aboard. So I happen to have...
Gray.
As my time rolls down,
it's already gone.
My time has
like
gone.
about a minute ago.
Okay, and as my time rolls down, I'd just like to indicate that I do have employee deduction forms with me tonight for anyone that might be interested. But I'd like to get this message out to the entire system, because it is a very, very strong need and a very, very important element in the support of students and success
here in the Halton District School Board.
Thank you
Thank
for that
you.
important message. And if you have anything else, you'll have to go back on the list. Thank you. Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. I just wanted to share an event that's taking place at one of my schools. Lester B. Pearson School Council, in partnership with the Guidance Department, is working very hard on an important event for parents using their Pro Grant. They're focusing on mental health, and they're pleased to announce this exciting event will take place on Thursday, April 28th. The keynote speaker is Cheryl Pounder, Olympic gold medalist for women's hockey, which I know most of us have heard. She was at the leadership conference last year. So she will be delivering her message on mental health and well-being. And there will be a few other people from the Guidance Council, social work, youth counselors, as well as the Halton Police. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gerbens.
Thank you. I wanted to reiterate how incredible the Halton Skills Competition was yesterday, and I was honored to be a judge for the grade 7 and 8 Lego robotics competition along with Superintendent Etoff. It was a true nail biter that came down to the last competing team who absolutely blew the competition away, and I was so impressed that I was up this morning at 6 a.m. looking up the cost of purchasing a kit for my kids. But as a side, another thing I wanted to, actually, I have a question. This week, the Minister of Education announced that students in grade 1 through 8 will be receiving 60 minutes of mathematics a week. And I would just like to know how many minutes a day Halton students currently receive.
Our students have been, our principals have been encouraged to timetable between 300 and 350 minutes of math instruction per week, which would be already at the 60-minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you very much. So just a couple of things. Firstly, Metrolinx released their Smart Commute report in the last short bit, including a school travel report for Halton region specifically, and it covers a period of time 1986 to 2011, so it's not totally up to date, but I suspect the numbers are fairly in line with current trends. And so the news isn't super great. Walking mode share in Halton region, so that's how many students walk versus other ways of getting to school, has declined for 11 to 13 and 14 to 17-year-olds. Walking occurs more often in the afternoons than in the morning. Auto use is increasing over time and is greater for girls than boys, particularly in the morning period. Halton region, this is good news, has the highest cycling mode share in the GTHA, so more of our students are cycling than in other regions around us, so that's great. The last point is that the decline in active transportation has implications for the health of our students, as the risks for overweight, obesity, vehicle occupant, and pedestrian injury increased with automobile use. In addition, I guess recent studies show that if our students are active on the way to school, they get to school and they're prepared and more engaged in learning. So I'm hoping that, Bike Week's coming up at the end of May, and the more that we talk about and take small actions, that we can help to change these numbers around a little bit. And also today was National Walking Day. So as we walk to our cars, at the end of the meeting, walk briskly and enjoy.
We did the 7th inning stretch.
That's right, and we did the 7th inning stretch, so we are doing great. April 10th to May 23rd is Change the World Youth Challenge, and so all students, all youth between ages 14 to 18 are encouraged to volunteer for 3 hours during that time, so to make connections with a community organization. Opportunities are posted on volunteerhalton.ca and or through other organizations that people may have an affiliation with. And for this one, you can go online through Volunteer Halton and also request a certificate of your participation. So that is coming up, and hopefully a lot. Last year, actually, 3,396 6 youth in Halton participated, so hopefully that'll go up this year. Thanks. 7, 6, 5. Under time.
Are we launching? Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. So I have just a piece of information, and then I have 2 questions for the director, please. So I think at the last meeting I had mentioned about the Burlington Healthy Kids Initiative, and I had mentioned that there was an event that was being planned, and I just wanted to sort of give you a little update on this very exciting initiative that's happening in our Aldershot schools. We have, what's exciting about this is we have a number of schools, including our coterminous board, who's participating in what is going to be a family fun physical Friday event on Friday, May 27th after school. It will coincide or be ahead of the Bike to School Week. So there will be a huge biking component to that event where there will be people will be encouraged to ride their bikes, get their bikes checked out, bike helmet checks from Halton Police. We've got all kinds of wonderful things. I'll update you again, but I just wanted you to put that on your radar. So the 2 questions I have, one, and I'm not sure if other trustees have received concerns from constituents, but regarding the immunization concerns. We have students, as you know, who have been issued school absence notifications, for lack of a better word, is that politically correct, for not having their proper immunizations up to date or the documents filed at the Halton region. And I just wanted to, if the director could be so kind as to share some perspective on that, because I think the learning here is, while this is very frustrating for families and parents and students, it's keeping grade 11 and 12 students out of school. It's a very important initiative that our principals are dealing with right now, and it's not going away, meaning the next wave next year will also be dealing with this concern, and I just would be so grateful if you could speak to that publicly. Thanks.
Through you, Chair Amos, I'll start and then I'll pass to Superintendent Pennyfather. This was not unanticipated that there would be a lot of angst in the community around this. The board is, this is a public health. I hesitate to say the word initiative, but this is a public health mandate, and it is them that is issuing the, you call them absences, but they're essentially suspensions until the immunization is either recorded appropriately or they have the immunization. And unfortunately, I'm sure many of our principals are dealing with this situation as well, and they have very little control over it. But I'll look to Superintendent Pennyfather to elaborate any further.
Thank you, Director Miller. To Superintendent Reynolds, or to Trustee Reynolds through the chair. This falls under the Immunization of Schools, School Pupils Act. And so although the principals are carrying out the suspensions, it's done, the suspensions are actually done through public health. There's been lots of notice to the parents, and they've actually been pretty successful. I've only had this binder for 8 weeks, but when I started, they were up around 3,000, and now they're down to 300 as of yesterday. And they sent out notification twice last year, mailed out notification. They've had clinics available at the schools, which the school principals have supported. They followed up with further notifications this week. They did another blitz. So I actually expected to get a lot of emails and complaints and phone messages today, but I didn't, because today was kind of the D-Day, and I haven't had any yet. So I'll keep the trustees posted on how it all worked out, but it looks like it was actually a pretty successful campaign.
Thank you. I have 27 seconds. Can I ask my other question?
Well, first I have to make a comment and
Okay.
thank Superintendent Pennyfather for his speaking the first time as a superintendent.
Good call.
Did you want to say something?
No, his words spoke for themselves.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and I echo that. Thank you for that response. I believe that the public will be really informed, and that's what we need to continue to remind them of this initiative and our efforts in meeting that objective and what the follow-up could be, because we have students coming down the pipeline who will be, again, next year in the same predicament. So my second question was, I get a lot of questions right now about summer school for the high school, the secondary school. It's advertised on the Gary Allen website that it would be announced in April, and I would be just here as a nudge. Can I nudge you a little bit and just say when we can expect that information? Because I know there's students who've received their reports and are now starting to plan their, maybe their curriculum plans for the summer might be revised pending their recent results, and knowing that ahead of time would be very valuable. Thanks.
Thank you. Associate Director Bogue.
Thanks, Chair Amos, and through you to Trustee Reynolds. The information will be out very shortly, probably within the next week. We always shoot for April, early to mid-April. One of the delays or one of the challenges is we need to look at facilities for the summer in terms of any changes from year over year. And just one little bit of good news for trustees is this year we will be offering summer school in Georgetown. We typically have not done that. We've traveled, bused the kids down south to Milton, and in the spirit of equity of access and certainly for our community in the far north, where that was one of the little pieces that we made a decision on that we would try to offer in Georgetown. Pending numbers, that sort of thing. But the folks at Gary Allen High School who supervise the summer school program are working on the plan now, and that should be out to schools very shortly.
Thank you. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few things. First of all, I want to thank Trustee L. Harrison for bringing the comments around active, safe transportation to and from school. That's an important initiative and an issue from public health perspective and school safety perspective. And of course, important in light of the work of the, and I forget the acronym, Active, Safe, Sustainable Transportation Hub. Collaborative of the municipalities and school boards in our region. Secondly, I'm very pleased to hear the results about immunization numbers and the numbers dropping for students who are still unimmunized according to the legislation. That's great to hear. And just a few things that are on the horizon for me and I know a lot of the fellow trustees. I will be attending the Mental Health Symposium tomorrow and the Healthy Schools Conference next Thursday. And I look forward to attending the Central West OPSPA meeting on Saturday, along with the visit to the Woodlands Cultural Center in Brentford. And last but not least, I really enjoyed being a judge at the Halton Skills competition yesterday. I had the joy of watching grade 4 through 6 students tackle their technology challenge. It was really inspiring to meet with them, sit with them, hear their process and how they were problem solving, and then to finally see the outcome. And so I want to thank Superintendent Terry Blackwell, who was a co-judge along with me, as well as, I'm trying to find the names now, Program Leader for Science and Technology, retired Ron Ballantyne, and Mr. Terry Yannick from Facilities. The four of us formed a team and really enjoyed spending the day with them. So thank you. Oh, and congratulations to Captain R. Wilson. They came in the top 3 in that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, since we seem to be on a theme of active, safe transportation to school. One of the things that I wonder about that report that comes out that says in the last, since 1986, fewer people are walking to school. But since 1986, we've had a massive increase in before and after school daycare use, the programs we have. And it's unrealistic to expect a parent to walk a child to the building and walk home and then get in their car and go when they're dropping their child at daycare at 7:30 when it's dark. So I think at some point we should start thinking about how we track this information, and a category for how did you get to this school, and did you come to school or did you come to before and after, like did you go home from after school? Because with some of the systems in place, even if you wanted to send your child to check into the before and after school, that may or may not be an option. So even if they could walk, they can't walk. And also at some point when we start getting a tipping point of 2/3 of the school are going to the before and after school, perhaps maybe we should have some kind of a tickler that says maybe that neighborhood needs an early bus run and not a late one. Because if nobody's left to take the bus because everybody's in the school already at the daycare, then, that's an idea. So I'm just putting it out there to say, I don't think anybody intends to make parents guilty that they drive their children in circumstances where they have to drive them. The point is to walk to the bus stop and walk when you can, and to get your older children walking even if your younger ones can't, and those kinds of things, and also to maybe do the after school recreation things and stay after school and do those kinds of things. And also if your child's in after school daycare, they're doing physical activity in that after school period, so to take that into account, and that's not offsetting in those reports. So just so parents don't feel put upon, there are some good reasons for some of those stats, and maybe we could break down our stats a bit better so we know whether that is the statistical reality.
Director Miller.
Through Chair Amos to Trustee Harvey Hope, I believe that report comes from Metrolinx, though. It's not our report, so I just, make sure that people understand that publicly, that we didn't gather the data on that as Metrolinx.
Thank you. And seeing no further speakers, I forgot an item. Last Thursday, Trustee L. Harrison and Trustee Reynolds and I attended Women as Career Coaches, and it was an amazing event, and you learn just as much from the students as you do from listening to all the speakers. It was very inspiring, and just an overall great event, and I'd like to encourage all of the senior leadership team and trustees and anyone else out there. It's a great opportunity to help make a difference. It can share your experiences, either as women as a career coach or men as a career coach, which is coming up the end of April, sorry. But it's a really great opportunity, and it's run through Hayek. So I'd urge you to take the opportunity if you get a chance. And I also like to remind the senior leadership team and trustees about our multi-year plan sessions, which start at 9 o'clock on Sunday here. Director Miller.
I forgot a comment in my director's report as well. We were contacted by one of the media outlets after one of the boards next door to us had announced that they were imposing a travel ban on students going to Europe. And they asked if we were doing it, and the answer was no, we were not doing it. It's a bit of a moot point because we only had one trip going out to Europe, and it was going to the Netherlands, and the parents chose, well, I guess the kids and the parents chose that they didn't want to go. But just so trustees are aware, we use Government of Canada travel advisories on these decisions, and at the present time there's advice about traveling to Europe, but no advisories. And I could give you a quick example. Country, and I'll use the extreme example, Libya. Libya says avoid all travel. Belgium, exercise a high degree of caution. So this is what we would use as our starting point in any of those kinds of conversations. As I said, it's a moot point. We had no schools going out to these places. So. All right.
Trustee Gray.
Yes, just a question to Director Miller. In the setup of all of our out-of-country trips, are the staff and students required to carry insurance for cancellation? In other words, if it had to be canceled, would they be covered, or would the board in any way be liable? I know that this was one of the concerns expressed in some of the newspaper articles that were printed with regards to some other boards' decisions at this time.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Gray, yes. The answer is yes. We implemented that about 4 or 5 years ago when it essentially started when we had a trip going to Kenya and there was some civil strife in Kenya. The trip was still allowed to go, but we implemented this after. So it isn't, they're all required to take cancellation insurance.
Thank you. Any other speakers tonight? Apparently, I just got an FYI. There's one student at Nelson who's part of a team of high school students who qualified to compete at a VEX Robotics World Championship. Just a minute.
World Championship?
That's
pretty good.
In Kentucky in 2 weeks, and not through the school. The team entered independently. So they're competing against teams from Canada, United States, China, Australia, Mexico, Philippines, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and Ireland, and Spain, and others. So that's quite the accomplishment, especially entering independently. So congratulations to them. VEX Robotics. V-E-X, VEX, right? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I think we're done. Oh, are you back on the list, or I just forgot to take you off? Oh. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Collard, seconded by Trustee Gray. Just a minute, I gotta get to voting. All those in favor?
Tracy said.
She's not voting.
My team's already out the door and the vote's not even completed.
That passes unanimously. Thank you and good night.
Senior admin, I don't think the vote is complete yet.
So sit down.